Hello everyone, in this video I will tell you the plot of the 2020 film Black Box. Enjoy your watching. A regular flight to Paris. The pilots work as usual, discussing work issues. Throughout the quiet and calm cabin of the plane, flight attendants begin serving food to passengers. The camera takes us to the plane's black box, which records their conversation between the pilots and airport employees. And suddenly the ordinary chatter about this and that is interrupted by the squeak of stunning instruments and the alarmed voice of an airport employee trying to find out the reason for the sudden loss of altitude of the plane. Young analyst Mathieu studies a video of a helicopter crash with his elderly boss, Polak. The old man, based on experience, is convinced that the cause of the fall was the failure of the tail rotor, but the gifted young man heard by ear that one of the gears was working slower than it should. He offered to conduct tests and check whether his guess was correct, but the stubborn old man said that he had seen this 1,000 times and refused him. Mathieu goes into the office, where work is in full swing. He learns from the friend about the crash of a plane with 300 passengers on board in the Alps. His touchy boss, going to the crash site, takes with him another assistant, who asks Mathieu to bring a certain box. Mathieu took it from his trunk and, while talking on the phone and squeezing between cars, accidentally scratched one of it. There was a video recorder in the car, and its owner was his boss. At the bathroom reception, a young man begins to have a headache due to the surrounding noise, which he gets rid of by putting on headphones and thus creating silence for himself. Xavier sits down with him, to whom he complained that he was not taken into the investigation. On the way home, Mathieu and his wife Noemi sort out the aircraft's documentation, according to which it must be absolutely in good working order. The radio announcer reports that a team of investigators has already arrived at the scene. Because of this, Mathieu becomes sad again, but the girl manages to cheer him up. Late at night, a young analyst watches the video of his boss unboxing the flight recorder, and then sadly watches how they analyze the data obtained without him. After completing a routine test, Mathieu is called to the carpet by the main boss, who assigns him to decipher the recordings in place of his missing boss. The young man immediately begins, having meticulously prepared for the work. Together with Balzan, he begins to listen to the recording, but from a certain moment, very strong interference begins, due to which it is impossible to understand anything. To hear human speech, Mathieu asks his partner to turn down the sound of the engine, and also stop jerking his leg, which distracts his keen hearing. He manages to hear someone in the cockpit shooting Allah Akbar. At a press conference, Mathieu tells reporters that according to the flight recorder, an unknown person who had previously hidden in the toilet came into the pilot's cockpit to fetch the flight attendant. Presumably it was a terrorist attack. The next day, the director of the organization was for a job well done and in the absence of Polak, appoints Mathieu as the chief investigator in this case. The analyst went to the home of the man whose wife was on board. He provided the answering machine recording she left behind when the plane crashed. The call time was 3 minutes later than official time of the crash. Mathieu shared this recording with the director, drawing attention to the points that interested him, but the boss did not take it seriously and told him to return to deciphering the recorder. In the hangar with the wreckage of the aircraft, the analyst approached an area representing the fuselage with seats numbers marked. He finds the place where the man who broke into the cabin was sitting, and then sits down on the chair in the rear. Having studied the photos that passenger took on board and managed to post on social media, as well as putting on headphones and once again turning on the recording from the black box, Mathieu mentally imagined himself on board the plane. With the help of photos and sounds, he managed to reproduce a little of what was happening on board. He tells his boss about his assumptions, but he orders him not to make guesses by analyzing individual sounds, but write about facts that can be established throughout the recording. Mathieu asks about Polak, whose opinion is needed to complete the report, but learns that he is suspected of a crime and is wanted. In a conversation with his wife, the analyst admits that he is confused by the inconsistencies that are revealed. He is confused by the black box. Colleagues whisper behind his back, believing that he hears something that is not there and may be mistaken. Having unsuccessfully trying to call Polak, Mathieu sneaks into his office, where he finds a strange note in his diary, as well as an opened letter. He arrives at the home of his former boss, whose address was indicated on the envelope. In the yard on the lawn, he discovers traces of a car leading into the forest. In the garage, he takes a tire iron, and after some hesitation, breaks the window and makes his way into the house. Having found nothing remarkable at the top, Mathieu retreats to the basement, where he finds a bunch of equipment and a laptop, which an entry from his diary helps him unlock. However, there are no files at all on the laptop. The analyst's attention is drawn to the car and the video recorder located in it. He takes out the flash driver and opens it on his laptop. After a long study of the records, he discovers that Polak met with his friend Xavier late at night. The next day, while Mathieu was driving in the car, Caroline, journalist who was at the press conference, called him. She asked if he knew that the plane built just a month ago had problems with its automation. Having received data from a colleague about the problems of aircraft of this type, the analyst comes into the conclusion that the problem may be in the MSD chip. If it breaks, the pilots will not be able to control the aircraft. He goes to a pilot who recently encountered such a problem on one of his similar planes. He is convinced that the Atrian company which produced aircraft knows about the problem, but they were in a hurry to overtake competitors and conclude a multi-billion-dollar contract with Qatar and India, neglecting to eliminate the malfunctions. When Mathieu asked how this could be, since the plane was certified, the pilot replied that the owner of the company had private members of the commission, one of whom was the analyst's wife. He asked his wife if there was a test report, but the question infuriates her and she leaves him unanswered. Mathieu asked his boss to conduct tests with the MSD chip from the plane, but is refused, since it was seized by the Ministry of Defense. The boss advised him to do something else, such a report on the helicopter. The pilot with whom the analyst was communicated stopped communicating, and when meeting Xavier, he advised him not to dig into the case, otherwise he would simply be fired because of his paranoia. At night, near the house, Mathieu noticed a Mercedes overtaking him on the road. While his wife was sleeping, he climbed into her laptop and downloaded a report on testing the aircraft into a flash drive, which he showed to his boss the next day in order to gain access to the MSD chip on this basis. Because of this, his wife is deprived of her new position and suspended from work. The chip is delivered from the Ministry of Defense, and Mathieu begins testing it. However, time after time, tests show that it's working properly. The analyst believes that he was replaced. In a convulsive state, he returns to listening to the flight recorder and eventually loses his temper. While walking in the park with his younger brother flying a quadcopter, Mathieu receives a call from the mother of one of the passengers on the crashed plane. At some point, the connection is interrupted, and the quadcopter, which the boy had already turned off, flew by itself. The analyst noticed that this was the work of the guys relaxing nearby and using some kind of device. Mathieu comes to the office of Xavier, who works at a company that protects electronic system of aircraft, including Atrian. He tells him that the plane system was hacked, and Xavier knew this from the very beginning and ordered Pollock to falsify the recordings from the recorder, which is why he stayed at work late. Xavier denies all accusations and politely asks his friend to mind his own business and leave. The journalists report that one hacker once managed to hack into the plane system, then he was able to change the operation of the engine. He was then detained by the police. Then he worked for 3 months at Pegasus, Xavier's company. Mathieu finds his photo, and in one of the photos of the passengers noticed a man who looks incredibly similar to him. He believes that his hacker wanted to show the system was faulty. The MSD chips was working, but it could not cope with opposite commands from the pilots and from burglar, and his name was later changed out the passenger list. He asked the journalist to write an article, but she refused, because 6 months ago he made a mistake when establishing the cause of the crash of another plane, and she cannot trust him, although she contacted him. The analyst attempts to apologize to his wife for his mistake leads to him being sent to hell. The boss tells Mathieu that he is suspending him from work. Belzan asks to send him materials by helicopter. The young man discovers a voice in the recording that was not there before and writes down the numbers he dictates. They turned out to be the coordinates to which he went. The navigator led him to Pollock's house and further along the tracks that he had noticed earlier. Having gone to the lake, he got into a boat located near the shore. Arriving in his destination, he began to peer into the muddy water, but seeing nothing, he undressed and dived. Underwater, he found a container containing a flight recorder. In Pollock's basement, he downloaded the files and played them immediately. According to records, the hacker changed the plane's course. The pilot switched to manual control, but the burglar turned the autopilot back on. After that, the system crashed. It no longer obeyed either the pilots or the hacker. The plane took a new course straight towards the mountains. After that, a video with Pollock began to play on the laptop, in which he turned to Mathieu, admits that a couple of years ago, when he was broke, he began to erase with Xavier, providing him with data on the crashes for money. Then Xavier ordered the black box records to be falsified, and threatened to destroy them if they refused. At that moment, Mathieu heard sounds on the street and urgently sent the video to the post office, and taking the recorder, rushed upstairs. At this point, 2 men with weapons entered the house and began to search the rooms. The analyst managed to distract them by remotely turning on the speaker in the basement and he ran away. Getting into the car, he hit the gas. On the road he noticed a tail, but increasing his speed he broke away from it, and after that, the electronics in his car began to be malfunctioned. First the navigator, then the radio, and finally the steering, as a result of which he crashed into a tree. At an exhibition dedicated to the aviation industry, during Xavier's speech, a video of Pollock's confession was played on the screen. It was turned on by Noemi, who managed to receive a letter from Mathieu. Rate the video as you see fit. Share your impressions in the comments, and thank you in advance if you subscribed. See you again.